So we have a number of panelists here from several different companies who all have kind of different takes and different positions in the OpenStack ecosystem. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear from the different viewpoints as we talk about what really is, I think, a question that I hear from organizations all the time. Do I need a private cloud? How much can I move to the public cloud? Is hybrid cloud real? Can I actually do that? And so, hopefully these fine panelists today are going to help us get all of the answers for that. So to start with, I would like to just go down the line, and we can do some quick introductions and then jump into some questions. And along the way, happy to take audience questions as we go along. I think we have a mic for the audience questions as well. But to start with, Frank, why don't you introduce yourself and just let everybody know kind of where you fit in the ecosystem.
So my name is Frank Rego. I work for SUSE as a business development manager. SUSE has been producing Linux for 22, 23 years. So we're not new to Linux. We have an OpenStack distribution, which I think our first release was Essex. So we've been doing OpenStack for a number of years.
That's a long time, yes.
It is.
Essex. All right, Annie.
Okay, hi, my name is Anni Lai. I'm with Huawei. As many of you know, that Huawei has been a CT company for the last 20 plus years. But actually, for the last 13 years, we've been investing very heavily in the IT space. We do have our own, server storage network and cloud platform, which is OpenStack based. And we have been involved in OpenStack since Grizzly days. In OpenStack world, we call it. We named the era by the release. And so our mission is to enable our telecommunication customers as well as enterprise and service providers to stand up their private cloud, public cloud, as well as hybrid cloud.
Thank you. And Andre?
Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Bearfield. I work with Blue Box. I work in the product organization, and I've worked specifically on OpenStack, the Blue Box Cloud product, which is a private cloud as a service product from its instantiation until ultimately the organization's acquirement by IBM a couple months ago. So we
Congratulations.
Thank you so very much. So we're primarily active in the private cloud arena.
Okay.
Hi.
Vino.
Hi, my name is Vino. I'm from the organization Wipro. So we are primarily doing consultancy and system integration around the open cloud technologies. We start with CloudStack, then move to OpenStack, and we have a couple of production implementation also.
Okay, great. So thank you guys for those introductions. The first thing that I want to start off with is, this panel is really, the way it was phrased was, public versus private versus hybrid versus AWS. When I've talked to companies, and I'm fortunate enough to get to go talk to lots of users, lots of organizations, what I hear is that they're often doing a mixture of those and trying to figure out how they navigate it over the long term. So my question for you is which models do you support? And do you think that that private clouds, this is something that we hear sometimes, private clouds are really just kind of a temporary step on the way to everyone putting everything in a public cloud? So anyone wants to take that, jump in.
I can. So Huawei, we are the enabler. So we enable our customers to, implement their private cloud or to implement their public cloud, operate their public cloud, and then sometimes they need hybrid cloud. And I also talk to a lot of customers. I've traveled to like 30 plus countries working for Huawei. Majority of the customers I talk to are telco and service providers. And I think, and then sometimes they have public clouds and they sell to their local markets. And I think it really depends on the customer. Like SMBs, obviously, they don't want to own IT anymore, so they will resort to public cloud. But for enterprises, they also realize that there's agility and scalability benefit from the public cloud. And also there's this shadow IT going on, and they realize that they really have to incorporate public cloud into their IT environment. So they're moving towards more of a hybrid cloud environment. They are not going to give up their private cloud for sure, because they have a lot of data centers. They have made a lot of investments. So giving up their own private cloud or their own IT is I think for the next 10 years, it's probably not going to happen. But they are all moving towards a public cloud environment.
So you said
I mean hybrid cloud environment.
You've said that you've been to 30 plus countries and working with telcos, and a lot of them are implementing public clouds. Are you seeing anything that's any trends by region in terms of public cloud adoption?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of, like the regions that we go to, a lot of, some regions that Amazon and, Google and Microsoft are there, so they obviously compete against those. But some even they are there because of the data sovereignty issues and stuff. So telcos becomes the de facto public cloud service provider because they own the customer, they have the government support, they have the network, so they become the public cloud service providers. But they're still, when it comes to cloud adoption, they're still, comparing to US market and Western European market, they're still a little bit behind. But they definitely see the benefits, and also the benefit of those regions that especially in Africa or Latin America, a lot of them they didn't have IT to begin with, so they didn't have to go through this transitioning or migration process. They can just start from scratch.
Okay, so Frank, SUSE has I know private cloud customers that some of them have come and spoken at our summits before. What do you think you see in terms of the trends around deployment models?
So as an operating system vendor, I think we're especially vulnerable to the new cloud ecosystem, right? So a lot of our customers, in fact, probably most of 90% of our customers are deploying to the public cloud. And we have a really good presence now in the public cloud on the big cloud providers, both the global providers and regional providers. At the same time, a lot of our customers are now looking at supplementing their private cloud. And when I say supplementing, I mean most of our customers are using VMware already. And so we rarely go into a customer who hasn't already virtualized 90% of their, what they're doing. But they're looking to not necessarily move off of VMware, but maybe supplement what they've done in a proprietary way with a more open standard around cloud. So I think we're seeing both ends of the spectrum. I think we're seeing customers move much quicker into public clouds. We're also seeing customers who have deployed in the public cloud but are now moving some of those workloads back into the private cloud. Mm-hmm. For us, the OpenStack business is growing. It's a lot of dev and test now. It's a lot of kicking the tires. With every new release that we do, we get more customers that are moving into production. But for sure, there is a mass migration to public cloud, and now private cloud just starting to take off. Okay.
So, and Andre, you at Blue Box, you have kind of a blended model with hosted private cloud where you allow people to have dedicated resources, but in a fully operationalized model. One of the biggest hurdles that we've seen people run into when adopting OpenStack is finding the expertise to operate those environments. And and Blue Box tried to productize an answer to that. Can you tell us what you're seeing, and especially, are there any particular workloads that you see because it's kind of a service provider model still. Why would they go with hosted private instead of just going straight to public cloud?
To public cloud?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So I think that to back all the way back to the beginning, the initial question, Ann is probably the most right here, right? So the thing is that every customer is going to have a different need. Every customer is going to have a different use case. That detail is probably not going to change. The reason why we determined to focus on private cloud as a service, this hosted model, is because cloud, especially OpenStack, especially in Havana and previous to Havana, was very difficult to deploy, very difficult to manage. Customers not only would have to build a data center, buy a bunch of hardware, figure out what software to use, but also figure out how to operate the hardware and the software that lives on top. So I guess your question is, why would a customer do any of that, and why not just use public cloud? And I think the reason is because a bunch of workloads have security and privacy requirements. And some customers require that their data is on a machine that they could point to, or in a data center that they could feasibly go in to visit. So I think that these workloads kind of necessitate kind of a variety in this market at the very beginning here. In addition to that, I think that in the future, so Blue Box built private cloud as a service. And obviously public cloud, the question of AWS, the elephant in the room, is huge and amazing to think about what they've done. And it really drives a lot of what's happening in the private cloud space and in the hosted private cloud space as these entities start to ramp up. And I think that some of the question around whether public cloud will take over there are a couple of reasons. I think the first reason is because in the public cloud, the developer can drive, right? It's not an IT organization necessarily. It's not a CIO question. It is a developer who needs to do something right now, and they will drive adoption. And I think that's what has led us in this direction, where public cloud is obvious. It's the first place to go. It's the easiest place to get because the developer has a need. But we still have these organizations that have these huge IT organizations, and they have 12 or 15 or 20 years of background doing this thing, and they're trying to figure out how to do the next thing. And I think public cloud is a difficult transition for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the first place that private cloud starts. And then the easiest way to step your way into cloud is probably avoiding purchasing that hardware, but building a data center, and then figuring out what software to buy, and then operating that software. So I think private cloud has a place there. I think private hosted cloud has a place there. And I think public cloud is the natural leader and will help us understand what the developer needs. At the end of the day, infrastructure as a service is just it's just a foundation on which a bunch of other things need to happen. Right. Because at the end of the day, we're empowering developers to do what they need as quickly as possible. I think that's what we want to do. And so I think that public cloud will continue to lead, but there are workloads that probably will never need to go there. And I think what we should be targeting as organizations is how can we provide a single, simple interface that allows customers to choose based on workload and data whether or not their services and their workloads are on their premises, whether they could be on a private cloud as a service on someone else's premises, but on dedicated machinery. And then finally, what's the easy, low-risk workload that I need to get up as soon as possible in public? So that's my thought.
So Vino, you provide services across a variety of these different deployment models. Have you seen, Andre was talking about picking the right model for the right workload. Have you seen any patterns in terms of which workloads people are moving to public or private, or to any of these different models across the customers that you've worked with?
Well, Jonathan, so what the model we are normally finding is, the traditional workloads, customer more prefer to move to a public cloud. It's more of a rendered virtual machine model. It's nothing to do with a cloud-like workloads. It's more of a rendered virtual machine. They move a couple of workloads in a very traditional fashion, move towards a public cloud. But many of our customers, those who are having the real cloud-like workloads, they are setting up private cloud. And this trend, so as a system integration partner for many of our customers, so what we are doing in this space is something like, we are bringing in almost 50 plus cloud technology partnership under one umbrella to test, validate, benchmarking many of the cloud use cases and bringing that value to the customer. And we are trying to build up a public-like private environment. Mm-hmm. And the trend is more of a, I can specifically tell that now many of the customers, they already started using public cloud. They are asking us to set up a proof of concept well within their environment and how seamlessly the workload can be moved from a public to private and how it bringing value to them. So we are seeing a lot of movement from public towards private.
Right. Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I found to be interesting is just in the last year, we have seen several OpenStack users, not just big users like PayPal and Walmart who have thousands of machines, but several OpenStack users who have set up private clouds for cost-cutting reasons. Because Tapjoy is one that comes to mind. which is a mobile analytics platform, and they were able to, they were a huge public cloud user, and as they went through and looked at their business model, they realized that they were pouring tons of money into the infrastructure, and they worked with a partner to kind of design and architect a private cloud environment. They were able to get 10x the resources for the same price in a private cloud by making sure that they built something that was specific for their need, which was data science and analytics. And so it's interesting, to see how, I think, Andre, you were talking about public cloud just kind of blows all of those barriers away for the developer.
Yep.
They have no barriers anymore between idea and on the internet, or idea and in front of customers.
Yep.
But over the long term, as some of these companies try to really find their long-term business model and squeeze that profitability out, it seems like private does become an option. So this is Trove Day. Do any of you have Trove-specific products or services that you're offering, or any kind of Trove connection?
We just started our partnership with Tesora a couple months ago, and like I said, our mission is to enable our carrier customer service providers and enterprise customers to be to stand up a private cloud or to be a public cloud provider. And we understand that database DBaaS, we call it DBaaS, is very popular, especially like I said earlier, a lot of SMBs, they really don't want to own IT anymore. So anything as a service, especially database, is such a very common requirement, is very appreciated. So we just partner with Tesora, and then and we're going through technical due diligence and doing a lot of testing work and stuff. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to offer Tesora DBaaS on top of a Huawei cloud OpenStack platform.
Okay.
Blue Box also partnered with Tesora.
Well done, Tesora.
Yeah, well, we got pretty far down the road, building out proof of concept, et cetera, and then Big Blue showed up, and now we're trying to figure out exactly how we continue to move this thing forward. I was reading an article a few weeks ago where the 451 research was talking about how database as a server, database as a service is responsible for about $150 million in revenue in the year 2012, but it's expected to be as much as $1.8 billion by next year, right? So I think that there's real movement in the broader market desire for database as a service. I actually think that specifically private cloud has lacked it there, because I think that what we're seeing is the traditional IT buyer who has a tendency to err on the side of physical machines for their databases.
Right.
But we just determined to kind of push this thing forward, because I think partially it's because they don't have the experience with public cloud to recognize the value of database as a service. So
right.
we think it's vitally important to move forward there.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that. We do a user survey every 6 months, and the number 2 workload, I think for the last 3 cycles that we've done the user survey, has actually been databases. The Trove service is not the number 3 service that's run, though, and I think that kind of points to what you're saying, where even if they move it into a virtualized environment or into an OpenStack environment, they're still thinking about it as this is a database that runs on a server of some sort, and so there's a lot of opportunity. Obviously, lots of databases running in these clouds, and putting more tooling around it is a big opportunity.
Yep.
So. One of the things that I'd be interested in hearing from some of you who work kind of across models, how do customers handle data in a hybrid deployment? How do they handle the issues of data gravity and databases across private and public use cases? Are they keeping those separate? Are they replicating? Are they using NoSQL databases? What have you guys seen as any of the common scenarios that people are making use of?
I think that's one of the challenges, is where is the data, and that's what we're seeing now. We honestly don't have a lot of customers that are doing hybrid deployments.
Okay.
Databases happen to be, I think, the most popular workload that exists on a SUSE Linux server at our customer today. So we have people that are using databases on SUSE in the enterprise. We have customers that are using it on SUSE in the public cloud. But I haven't seen a lot of hybrid usage yet, I think precisely because it's difficult
because it's
to
hard.
know. Right, it's hard. Where the data is. Is the data and the workload running in the same place? So I suspect that'll get easier over time, but maybe you guys have a better answer.
Well, so when we have certain practice around the SaaSification and cloudification of workloads. So to promote that, the service practice, we actually created a video. Our marketing team, they are sitting here, so they created a video, something like switch off a button, the data is flowing between public to private, private to public. First time I was seeing the video, I was like, so this is something, something we are evaluating. Primarily we are working with the Tesora precisely for that reason, where we are seeing the while we SaaSifying many of our customers' data, we are seeing a potential chance to bring in database as a service layer to that the DB tier at least. So currently, many of our customers are running the app tier on OpenStack and the data tier on typical virtual machines, or even on physical boxes on a a active passive type of cluster with a shared storage typical, and it will talk with the app tier on OpenStack.
Yeah. Well, so Tesora. What other tools are you seeing in common that people are using across OpenStack environments? OpenStack itself is a set of services that provide those really fundamental building blocks around compute, storage, and networking. But as you're saying, what's really important is all of those workloads that get put on top. So what are people using for monitoring? Are you seeing platform as a service? Anything with containers? What are the trends that you're seeing in terms of the kind of the tooling ecosystem?
I think for us, really a lot of it is homegrown today. I mean, so much in the same way that people like to start with upstream OpenStack, and then they figure out it's really hard to deploy, and so we get a lot of customers that want to do a distribution because that's just a lot of the benefit. So a lot of the tooling is homegrown. We're seeing a lot of usage of Horizon, from a management dashboard standpoint. But the thing that I would say drives a lot of the decisions is the network and the SDN tools, the plethora of SDN tools that are out there. It's a very important. Getting the network right is very important for our customers. And so they have a lot of choices, and there's nuances to each of them. But I think that.
What are some of the nuances?
So we.
I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yeah. It's depending on what layer of the network that these vendors address. Some of them address, only layer, 3, right? So layers 1, 2, and 3. Some of them address all layers 4 through 7. It depends on what the use case is for the customer. So we end up dealing, we have partnerships with 3 or 4 network providers that all kind of do different things. And the choice of the OpenStack vendor is almost secondary, because they're keying in on the network. So, yeah. But it's important as an OpenStack provider to build an ecosystem of partners that can plug in and work with your stuff. And so that's what we've ended up doing.
Yeah.
My observation is, I think we're going through this management tool, sprawl era. And in fact, that's one of the biggest challenges for a lot of large IT shops, because over the years, they have inherited a lot of management tools. And vendors also, they have their own, management tools. And even a lot of vendors even claim that their management tools work in a hybrid cloud environment. So you have so many choices, but then, which one is the one to go? So that's why I think OpenStack is good news for everyone, because if everybody is OpenStack compliant, then, the interoperability will be there and the integration will be a lot easier.
Andre, you look like you.
I kind of alluded to this earlier. I think about OpenStack, as infrastructure as a service. And I think I don't think we have to figure out a lot of these answers, because I think public cloud is leading in these ways. We can think about kind of how they've empowered the developers and look at the catalogs that they've developed and kind of try to understand why, how many customers are consuming these services and why are they consuming these services. I think ultimately, when I think about infrastructure as a service, it still requires, people to build and manage servers and install operating systems on machines. And ultimately, that's not something that developers probably want to do either. You mentioned PaaS, and I think that really platform as a service is an incredible opportunity for us to take one step on top of this IaaS level and really simplify a bunch of the things that, this whole concept of DevOps has been created to solve this gap here. But, the PaaS layer really empowers developers. We've seen from Heroku's success, et cetera, but really just having a simple dashboard and empowering developers to do what they need to do, and just being able to lay that on top of OpenStack is I think, really empowering.
So I can ask you this because I started one of the first PaaS companies 10 years ago. And we ran 500,000 applications, .NET and LAMP, and we were collectively pushing more bandwidth than YouTube at the time. So I was an early believer in PaaS.
Yeah.
However, do you think that PaaS means anything? Because I'm an old disillusioned PaaS provider now, sort of. Because what I realize is, eventually people outgrow it. They have a custom need. They have something, and this was when I was doing what became the Rackspace Cloud. And at the time, we were able to offer them dedicated servers or cloud servers or whatever. But do you think that there's going to be a PaaS model that can meet a broad enough set of needs?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and we needed you to have the experience you had to understand, what this is. And I think that really, when you're talking about net new developers getting onto a platform, it's probably primarily a lead generation deal, right? Where you also have the capacity of offering infrastructure as a service, and maybe you add also this cataloging feature, which allows customers to pick and choose the things they want to utilize after they have outgrown, feasibly outgrown the PaaS, right? But also you have organizations, so that's a public perspective, maybe that's a hosted perspective, but on the private perspective, you have customers who, they're IT shops, they manage servers, they do this stuff that public cloud is doing and abstracting from customers, but there are these entities that still do this. And what they want to do is just simplify this whole lead flow from the developer to IT. And so I think that there's a tremendous benefit there. I don't know if there is a PaaS-only model for revenue model. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I do think that the technology is tremendously valuable. And I think that it does fill an this air gap here between IT and engineering. And I think there's just clearly some space there that we need to figure out how to create a buffer for.
Okay. If there's VMware, then that also implies that there's a lot of Windows in addition to Linux workloads inside of these environments. So what's the what are you guys seeing with mixed operating systems and especially Windows specifically?
Well, we have governed a tight ship at Blue Box so far, so we have really restricted what customers can do because we've been opinionated about it. But more and more we hear the desire to have Hyper-V, and we have not dug into that quite yet.
We have.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell us about
So
it.
Frank,
we support Hyper-V. I honestly don't know how many customers today are taking advantage of running their Windows workloads on OpenStack in SUSE OpenStack Cloud, but it's there and it's supported. And we're, it's just having multiple hypervisor support often is just a good, checkbox for the customer. But that's more around ESX. I think there's more ESX workloads running on OpenStack for us than there are Hyper-V.
Yeah. So, back to the tools discussion, you mentioned that you had, I think you said 50-something partners around, the cloud practice that you have. What are the tools? What are the things that are being added into OpenStack environments or these cloud environments to kind of get them to that level where they're fully useful?
Well, so one of the layer from from our experience, clearly lacking the feature what customer expecting is the something like a hybrid infrastructure management layer. Having said that, multiple players are there in that area. Many of these early players in this area, whether they are calling it as a multi-cloud manager or a hybrid cloud manager or a hybrid infrastructure manager or whatever it is, the problem with those components are they are pretty much monolithic, or it is not a modular format. So take the example Tesora. So once we adopt Tesora to many of our early implementation of OpenStack, it is very tied to integrate the Tesora layer towards a hybrid cloud management layer. So we have to wait till 3 or 4 version down the line to add that component towards that hybrid cloud management layer. So this is one of the area clearly lacking currently, because I still believe there is a wide open opportunity to build a hybrid cloud management platform which is modular enough. As and when OpenStack onboarding projects, the projects can be plugged to that layer, and still still that layer can manage OpenStack, the cloud stack, or even forget about cloud stack, but at least vSphere infrastructure, or in that matter AWS. So that layer should be it should be a pluggable model than a monolithic model. So whatever currently available applications which is claimed to be managed multiple infrastructures, this all it's not flexible simply.
Yes. Okay. Well, so I think that that fills up our time, and I just want to thank our panelists here, Frank, Anni, Andre, Vino. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Sounds like we live in a very exciting period for technology, and especially cloud, as there are many opportunities and many challenges to figure out. And thank you guys for talking through them with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, everyone.